The racial demographic shift occurring in many Western countries provides a unique context to study the reactions of a high-power group, white people, to the potential loss of their privileged position in society. 3 experiments, the N equals 77, N equals 302, N equals 555, conducted in Canada, the US, and the UK showed that white people who are reminded about the ongoing demographic changes and who see race relations as a zero-sum game whereby any gains by minorities must come at the expense of the majority, experience stronger collective angst and, to a lesser extent, fear, but not anger. In turn, collective angst, but not the other negative group-based emotions, fuels their motivation to protect the existing intergroup hierarchy by withdrawing support for progressive social movements and increases anti-immigration sentiments. Downregulating the existential threat experienced by white majorities in the face of a racial demographic shift may be one way to reduce acrimonious behavioral intentions aimed at preserving their place in the social hierarchy. Keywords: Black Lives Matter, collective angst, existential threat, racial demographic shift, zero-sum beliefs. On August 3, 2019, a white gunman shot and killed 23 people and injured 23 others in El Paso, Texas. In the attacker's alleged manifesto, he cited protecting white people, the current dominant social group in most Western countries, from the Great Replacement, i.e., the belief that the white race is being replaced by people of color, as his primary motivation. Elegant, 2019, Wood, 2019. Putting a dark line under the attacker's troubling sentiment, Eddie S. Glodd Jr., an African-American studies professor at Princeton University, forcibly argued that social scientists were already writing that what was driving the Tea Party were anxieties about demographic shifts, that the country was changing. They were seeing these racially ambiguous babies on Cheerios commercials. That the country wasn't quite feeling like a white nation anymore. Scott, 2019. In doing so, he pointed to a powerful social force that may be guiding some white people's attitudes and behavior, a perceived threat stemming from changes in the racial makeup of the country. In point of fact, there is a growing body of research that suggests changes in the racial makeup of countries in which white people are currently the privileged majority are threatening those people. Craig and Richardson, 2014a, 2014b, which results in negative emotions, as well as attitudes and behaviors aimed to maintain the existing social hierarchy. Example, prejudice toward disadvantaged groups, Aberscore. 2015, by Ann Federico, 2020, Craig and Richardson, 2014a, 2017, Alternate or 2018. In the current research, we tested the assumption that those who believe that any gains by one social group must come at the expense of others, i.e., those who espouse zero-sum beliefs, will perceive a racial demographic shift to be more threatening than those who do not harbor such beliefs. Consequently, we expected that those high in zero-sum beliefs will react to information about the racial demographic shift occurring in their country with more negative group-based emotions than those low in zero-sum beliefs. In the extreme, the Great Replacement, i.e., a belief that non-white people will displace white people one, stems from a perceived existential threat. Alba, 2020, Bromley, 2018, 2019, and thus should elicit collective angst, i.e., a group-based emotion that reflects concern for the in-group's future vitality. Wallet or 2010. Similarly, we hypothesized that collective angst should be experienced when a racial demographic shift is perceived in existential terms. Herein, we tested the idea that this would be the case among those who hold zero-sum beliefs about intergroup relations, i.e., gains by the out-group necessarily result in in-group loss. Importantly, collective angst is functional in that it motivates action tendencies aimed at protecting the in-group's future vitality. For a review, see Wallet or 2012. In this light, we also assessed downstream consequences of this group-based emotion. Specifically, we posited that white people who espouse zero-sum beliefs and are exposed to information about the racial demographic shift occurring in their country should respond defensively by experiencing collective angst, as well as anger and fear, which should then manifest in their lack of support for progressive social movements, for example, Black Lives Matter, BLM, and in anti-immigration sentiments. We assess the utility of this mediated moderation model in 3 Western societies: Canada, the United States, US, and the United Kingdom, UK. Go to how racial demographic shift affects white people. Due to higher birth rates in minority and immigrant groups compared to white people, as well as increased immigration from non-white countries, Kaufman, 2018, many Western countries are projected to become majority-minority societies in the near future. Giannakourou, 2010, Kaufman, 2018, U.S. Census Bureau, 2012. The growing diversity influences attitudes and behavior of the currently dominant social groups that are facing the prospect of becoming numeric minorities and thus potentially losing some of their long-standing privileges. When the racial demographic shift in the U.S. is made salient to white Americans, the currently dominant social group, there is a significant increase in their support for conservative policies such as increased funding for the Department of Defense. Craig and Richardson, 2014b, 2017. Among other negative effects, racial demographic shift salience triggers stronger explicit and implicit anti-minority prejudice. Craig and Richardson, 2014a, Social Distance Towards Minorities, by Ann Federico, 2020, Discrimination Towards Racial Outgroups, Labasco, 2015, and an expectation among white people that they will become targets of discrimination in the future. Craig and Richardson, 2017. These negative responses have been explained as a result of white people framing the racial demographic shift as a threat to the privileged position they currently occupy. Craig and Richardson, 2014a, 2014b, for example, reported that being informed about the changes in the racial makeup of their country made white Americans experience a status threat. An alternate or 2012 showed that white Canadians experienced generalized threat as a response to the racial demographic shift. By Ann Federico, 2020, Study 2 showed that some white Americans believe the racial demographic shift, framed as a decrease in the global white population, posed an existential threat, a sentiment akin to the Great Replacement concern expressed by the white gunman in El Paso, Texas we noted earlier. Go to zero-sum beliefs turn the racial demographic shift into an existential threat. There is abundant evidence for the negative effect of the racial demographic shift on white people's emotions, attitudes, and policy preferences. See Craig and Richardson, 2014a, 2014b, 2017. However, limited research attention has been directed toward the boundary conditions of these effects. For exceptions, see Major et al., 2018, Perkins et al., 2022. We contend that zero-sum beliefs are critical for understanding when white people will respond defensively to information that their country is experiencing a racial demographic shift. Zero-sum beliefs, examined as metaphors capturing folk economic beliefs by Perkins et al., 2022, can be defined more broadly as pertaining to people's convictions about the nature of contingency between elements of a system. Binmore, 2007, Coleman, 1995, Esses et al., 1998, 2001. This system can be understood as the economy, Perkins et al., 2022, the society, Esses et al., 2001, or simply relations between people in general, Rosicotran et al., 2015. Regardless of the scale, endorsing a zero-sum outlook entails seeing relations between elements, or, to use a game theory terminology, players of the system as inherently antagonistic. A gain by one person or group must necessarily come at the expense of another. Binmore, 2007, Rosicotran et al., 2015, Stefaniak et al., 2020. In the context of intergroup relations, zero-sum beliefs contribute to the persistence of intractable intergroup conflict. Bartal and Halperin, 2011, Miles and Macaulay, 2005, and predict anti-immigrant attitudes. Esses et al., 2001, as well as high-power social groups' unwillingness to engage in activities that promote greater equality. Radke et al., 2018. Schmidt et al., 2007, Stefaniak et al., 2020. In the present research, we tested the hypothesis that zero-sum beliefs moderate racial demographic shift effects among privileged, white, group members. Privileged group members who believe that any gains by one social group must come at the expense of others should be particularly sensitive to a racial demographic shift. This is because the status threat posed by the racial demographic shift likely takes on an existential flavor. Not only might the racial demographic shift reduce in-group status, there may also be concern that it will lead to the Great Replacement. See Alba, 2020, Cosentino, 2020. That is, it may lead to concern that, in the near future, if nothing is done to stop the shift, the privilege in groups' values, its lifestyle, and the color of the country will be changed forever. Go to collective angst. Why demographic shift prompts negative responses from high-power groups. Although the link between racial demographic shift and a host of negative intergroup outcomes, example, prejudice towards minorities, Craig and Richardson, 2014a, discrimination, Aberscore, 2015, is well established, a paucity of empirical research has explicitly assessed why this link exists. Yet, it is known that group-based emotions are the mechanism by which appraisals of threat influence group members' attitudes and behaviors. See Cottrell and Newberg, 2005, E. A. Smith, 1993, 1999. According to intergroup emotions theory, E. A. Smith, 1993, 1999, events, real or imagined, that are appraised as consequential for the in-group will elicit group-based emotions. Moreover, group-based emotions mediate the relation between group-relevant appraisals and the resulting behavioral intentions to respond. Emotions and intentions are not merely independent paths that stem from appraisals. The significance of emotions as mediator lies in the fact that every group-based emotion produces a specific behavioral intention. Mackey et al., 2000. Put differently, behavior is not simply a response to a cognitive appraisal of an event. Behavior is the product of emotions that are elicited from the appraisal process. For instance, a plethora of empirical work has shown that appraising one's group to be under existential threat induces collective angst, a group-based emotion that reflects concern for the in-group's future vitality. For reviews, see Dupuy et al., 2015, Wall et al., 2012, see also Tobry et al., 2018. Because collective angst is a future-oriented emotion, i.e., it is a response to the prospect of threat-related outcomes, most theorists, example, Barlow, 1991, distinguish it from fear, which is characterized by an immediate surge in arousal and activation of the fight-or-flight response. Providing empirical support for this supposition at the group level, Wall et al., 2010, showed that whilst an existential group-based threat, example, that the in-group may, one day, disappear, elicits collective angst, it fails to elicit collective fear or anger. Importantly, the goal of collective angst is to motivate action deemed capable of protecting the group against the perceived existential threat. Wall et al., 2012. For instance, collective angst heightens support for policies that are believed to solidify the in-group's future vitality. Example, Quebecois support for an eventual Quebec sovereignty from Canada. Wall et al., 2011, a behavioral intention that is not produced by fear or anger. Wall et al., 2010. In the current research, we tested the idea that the prospect of white people losing their status as the numeric majority is seen by many whites in existential terms. For a similar argument, see by Anne Federico, 2020. However, unlike previous research, we put forth the yet untested hypothesis that appraisal of the shift as an existential threat would depend on the extent to which people see intergroup relations as a zero-sum game. Members of the currently dominant social group who are reminded about the ongoing demographic changes in their country, and who believe that gains by minorities must come at the expense of their own group should be most likely to experience collective angst. Thus, we hypothesized that the prospect of white people losing their numeric majority status will elicit collective angst among people who identify as white and espouse zero-sum beliefs.